Good evening, everyone. Seeing that it is 6:30 on Tuesday, September 17th, 2024, and having a quorum in place, I'd like to call to order the Wilmington Wildwood Early Childhood Center Building Committee. As always, we'll begin with roll call.
Dr. Brand,
Here.
Paul Ruggiero,
Here.
Diane Allen, here. John Holloway, Greg Vendel,
Here.
Kevin Kyra, Kate Bissell, Stacy Scott, here. Christine Holleran,
Here.
Christine Murray, here. Dennis Kelly,
Here.
Eric Schlegel,
Here.
Judy O'Connell,
Here.
Nicholas Golden,
Here.
Stephen Turner,
Alternate.
Paul Millerani,
Here.
David Ragsdale,
Here.
Mary Ann Galezo, here. Michael Pomosio,
Here.
Craig Minor,
Here.
Vivian Barbedian,
Here.
Christine Prendergast, here. And Justin Couchet.
Here.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to the second item tonight is the approval of minutes. These minutes are from the August 20th meeting. I'm told that was our 19th meeting. No surprise, but certainly looking for a motion of approval again for the August 20th, 2024 minutes of the committee.
So moved.
Thank you. We have a first, who was that for second? Vivian. Roll call vote then.
Dr. Brandt,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
Diane Allen, I'm abstaining. John Holloway is not present. Greg Rendell,
Yes.
Kate Bissell, present. Stacy Scott, Christine Holleran,
Here. Yes.
Dennis Kelly,
Yes.
Eric Schlegel,
Yes.
Judy O'Connell,
Yes.
Nicholas Golden,
Yes.
Stephen Turner,
Alternative.
Paul Millerani,
Yes.
David Ragsdale,
Yes.
Mary Ann Galezo,
Yes.
Michael Pomosio,
Yes.
Craig Minor,
Yes.
Vivian Barbedian,
Abstain, I wasn't at the meeting.
Christine Prendergast,
Yes.
and Justin Couchet.
Yes.
Okay, with that, that passes. Thank you. Moving on to item number 3 is the approval of invoices for warrant number 16 this evening. Julie.
Just 1 second. Sorry, I had it open on my screen and I closed my screen.
I think it's warrant 15.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. Appreciate that. That's easy than me scrolling. Warrant article number 15. This is for invoices for the month of August. The first invoice is for Christine Prendergast, for a banner that we use at the front of the fort in the amount of $79.98. Next up is SMMA's invoice, for the month of August in the amount of $7,500, and followed by Dorn Whittier Architects invoice, for $3,000. Total warrant article in the amount of $10,579.98. And Dennis Kelly with the recommendation from the Finance Working Group.
Before we do that, I'm sorry, just for the record in the minutes, is it warrant number 15? Although it's noted as 16 on the agenda,
Yes, it is, sorry, it is warrant article number 16.
can that be captured in the minutes? And so it's looking for, I'm sorry, Dennis, approval for warrant number 15 then.
Warrant number 15. I would like to make a motion to approve warrant number 15 for the total amount of $10,579.98. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion in a second. Comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Dr. Brand,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
Diane Allen, yes. Greg Vendel,
Yes.
Kate Bissell.
Yes. Yes.
Christine Holleran,
Yes.
Christine Murray. Yes. Dennis Kelly,
Yes.
Eric Schlegel,
Yes.
Judy O'Connell,
Yes.
Nicholas Golden,
Yes.
Stephen Turner,
Alternate.
Paul Millerani,
Yes.
David Ragsdale,
Yes.
Mary Ann Galezo,
Yes.
Michael Pomosio,
Yes.
Craig Minor,
Yes.
Vivian Barbedian,
Yes.
Prendergast, yes, and Justin Couchet.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on to our, what really is combined is our item number 4 and item number 5 tonight, project update presentation. And that will flow into community outreach update. Item number 6 is the update on usage of elementary gym space. And we do have some visitors here who will join us from the rec department as well as from WPS, our director of athletics. But so 4 and 5 are somewhat combined, and we'll start with Wanda.
Thank you, Dr. Brand. Just as a refresher, these are the 9 options that were shortlisted and have been further studied in this preferred schematic phase. The overall project scoring and the estimated project cost. Sorry, folks. Okay. Can anyone watching remotely see the screen? No.
We cannot see the screen and the sound keeps cutting in and out slightly. Green is visible.
So this is the total scoring and estimated project cost that were completed during this phase of preferred schematic. The estimates were completed in July, and we reviewed these costs, but the project costs have slightly shifted either up or down based on the options and some of the detailed information that was developed or discovered during this phase. This is the potential local share when we're looking at addressing all pre-K-5 students, depending on which project is selected to move forward with the MSBA. So, for example, the pre-KK would not address the students of grades 1 through 5. And so the repair-only options have been combined with the MSBA project to address all the pre-K-5 students. So we're looking at apples to apples on the potential local share of the project. Eric, do you want to just touch on this one?
Sure. So this is the estimated local share, the midpoint of the estimated local share of each of the options, of the 5 options, and then our annual debt payment. It's important to note the caveats on this. This is based on a 30-year loan with a fixed principal debt, so it's declining payments over the 30 years at a 4% interest rate. And the monthly impact, the annual tax impact, the monthly impact are all based on an average single family value, which is for Wilmington $683,790. So as you can see, the range for that monthly impact.
Thank you, Eric. And then one thing I'll add, I know right now on the screen, you're seeing that there's 5 options and we really have 9 options total. 4 of the options are added and kept in this phase for cost comparison. So they weren't included when we did these numbers.
People have questions to the town manager. When are we doing the revaluation of properties in town?
Next year.
Yeah.
Next year, so it'll be after this.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
This was another metric that was generated to give you an understanding of the impact of the life of the bond. And 2 of the things that I'll highlight are rows that stood out. The estimated number of students that would benefit from a project over 30 years, depending on which grade configuration was selected, whether it's pre-K, pre-K3, and pre-K5. And then also the estimated local share project cost per student over the 30 years. Michael Mosio, are we just going to take us through community outreach updates?
Sure. So I see that, there's items on here, but there's a few things I want to cover also what's happened already. So update to date, so we obviously have some survey updates we'll get to later. Once the townwide panel was available, there's been a series of social media posts prepared to get that information out as well in that format. as well as just sent some information to Wellington Apple, the Patch, and I believe the town crier. Poster boards, thanks to Dennis and I believe Paul, also were available in time for voting on Tuesday the 4th. So at each polling location, there was a poster board as well as copies of the flyers. I understand a lot of people took the flyers there. And then the first week of school, I understand most principals, if not all, inside their flyers or packets that teachers gave out at the open houses, both had flyers in there. And then at the entrance, there was the poster boards for the people to see at the school. And thank you to Marianne assisted in getting flyers out to some local restaurants, grocery stores, some of the same places we took it before, but we got more locations now. As far as upcoming items, which goes to this list tomorrow night here at 6:30 in the auditorium, is community forum number 5. Dr. Brands had sent a series of community updates, both regarding that event and then this as well to students and those involved in the school system. I understand the town's forwarding that information along, and a lot of that's been posted on the town website and this project website. Then on Thursday, the 19th at 1 p.m., there's going to be a presentation at the senior center.
2 p.m.
2 p.m. Sorry, 2 p.m. I have a question, I guess, regarding that. Is there a survey that's been prepared that's ready to go? I also sent a copy a couple weeks ago looking for comments, a paper version of the survey. They want to clarify in this meeting if that's the version we're using or if we need others. Either way, the plan is to have a paper survey that those in attendance can take. And since we don't want to pressure anyone to have to fill it out while they're listening, Terry's agreed at the senior center that for about a week, the surveys can be dropped back off of her, and I'll arrange to pick those up and we'll tally those. And then, I think that's the only update, so if there's questions there.
Are you gonna be able to walk the seniors through the survey, walk them through like what every response means a little bit?
I'd say yes, but I understand, Dora, what you've been now tasked with running that meeting? Okay, is that correct?
Yes, so we will take them through the survey. We'll have, whether they want to do it on Mentimeter, we can walk them through that and give them an example of how that works. And we're also, there will be several of us in the room to help facilitate that if they do want to try it in Mentimeter. And then we will also have paper copies of the same survey available, and then we'll have to input those in.
And at some point, can the town send out another townwide email with just a link to multi? I know they put the flyer in last time, but unless you click on the flyer, you can't get to the link.
Yes, it's not a live link.
So just a link in the email so people can direct access.
We can create a live link for that and you can send.
So we do have a live link now, so it is live, we changed it, and we can certainly redistribute that out, so, if it's okay for the chair, I can take that as an action item to bring back to the town manager's office.
May I ask, out of curiosity, do you know how many users or recipients are on the townwide email list?
I do not, but I can certainly circulate that first thing in the morning.
Curious.
I may be able to get it before the end of the meeting, here.
Thanks.
Through text, and then, if it's okay with, through the chair to answer the question, the intent would be to get the same paper survey as what Mentimeter has online. And the town manager's office has offered to do paper copies because we're gonna be there. So we'll certainly, I believe you're coming to that as well. So just to take that off your plate, the manager's office will copy that and make sure the paper copies are there. And then it will be the same survey as what everyone else is taking.
Right. Thank you.
I think one other update that I forgot. So we've since arranged, we'll be at Fall Fest in September. I think once the parking lot opened, they originally had said no, but once the parking lot opened, I think they realized they have a little more space. They were accepted. So thank you, Justin, for reaching out a second time. So we'll be there.
Great. Last time we were here, we presented preliminary results for the community forum survey, community forum number 4 survey. That at the time of that meeting, the survey was still open. And based on all of the responses, you know, we had over 150 people access Mentimeter during and after the community forum, and more than half of them identified as parents at the time. We presented, or we asked for, responders to score which option they selected as their preferred option. We did that before we presented the project cost, and then after we shared the local share impact. And the scores were very similar. The first ranking option was the pre-K-5 new at North. And then in this survey, there was a strong preference for the larger 12,000 square foot gymnasium based on the feedback that was received. At the time, there was no cost that was shared. And so after this survey was completed, in the next survey that was generated, we did address that, and we have included cost as part of that survey. Right now, the survey that is still active is due, and it will close actually October 1st. A full report of the results will be provided at the next SBC meeting on October 8th. And all of the open feedback that is provided through the survey will be distributed to everybody here soon after October 1st, as soon as we can kind of extract that information and send it to you, because there are a considerable number of comments. And, you know, so today, and you received an email, I believe on Thursday or Friday, that had the update as of that point. Today, we pulled the information again. And so you have a printed version, and you may have received an electronic version of those comments as well, just because it is a lot to read through. So we're trying to get that to you as quickly as possible so that you can have time to review all of the comments that have been received. But in general, we'll just review where the results are as of this morning.
Yes, Ron, ask a question. Sorry.
So is the updated survey results, does it include all of the former results just with the new ones added on? Or is this what we received tonight? Is that just the new stuff separate from the previous?
Good question. The packet that you received today includes everything, including what you received on the 13th. So it's not in addition to, it just had to do with the way we were able to extract the information.
But we're not adding numbers to community forum looking for results, right?
Oh, correct. No.
Yes, what I was getting at is that, so I've already gone through all the comments from the ones that were shared earlier in the week. And so I just want to have a sense of how many of these are repetition, and it sounds like we'll just have to sort of find where the new comments start in the updated file, because there's kind of no way to see like where that line is between, oh, these are ones that were already shared with us, and these are the new comments that have been added since then.
Correct.
When we share these out again, right after October 1st, we will give you that line break of the stuff that you're reviewing tonight in paper format, so you know just what the new additive comments are.
And so the packet that you received today has today's date on it, so that next one we'll receive whatever updated, will have the updated date on it.
Well, I just want to be clear about the timing on shutting the survey down on the 1st. And you're going to give us results on the 4th, is that what you said?
On the 8th, October 8th is the next SBC meeting.
So when will we get the updated results of the survey after you shut it down on the 1st?
We'll probably need maybe 2 days to at least.
For the meeting?
Yeah, so
2 days after the survey is closed.
So why are we closing it down on the 1st? Seems to me we could probably keep it open as
Closing it October 1st will give us 1 week to extrapolate all of the information and then put it into a format so that we can present it for October 8th. It'll also allow us to run some different metrics on it. For example, I'll be able to tell you, this many parents responded with this is their preference, this many community members had a preference, there's different metrics that we can run, but we'll just need time to be able to run that. So we want to give ourselves enough time to give that to, because the board packet is actually due prior to October 8th. It's due, I believe, that Thursday or Friday for it to get to you.
that's the timing.
So we're trying our best to give ourselves enough time.
Is it okay to filter the comments, either pro or con, and be able to kind of gauge with some kind of a metric what the comments are going to be? I know it's kind of subjective, but
we are going to do our best to try to give you the general themes that we're seeing based on the comments. Right now, you'll see there's over I don't know if it's 400 comments or something, or 600 comments. There's quite a few, so I'm anticipating by October 8th, there'll be even more. So we're gonna do our best to filter it as much as we can.
And will you be able to give us a number or percentage or a roundabout number so that, like, I just don't want to come in here and hear, like, there's a lot of comments for this and a lot of comments for that, you know what I'm saying? I just don't want it out there.
Yeah,
If there's a
we're
way
gonna see
that,
what we can pull with the comments, because the comments themselves are not linked directly. I take that back. They're text fields.
So there's not a lot you can do with them.
Right, so like, for example, you know how sometimes we would do like the word salad where the words that were picked out the most? Right now, the format that it's in won't allow us to do, we would have to try to take it out, put it into something else and maybe create something like that. But we'll see what we can do given the time frame.
thank you.
But in mind, circling back, so the reason that they need to cut it off on the first is so that they can take at least 2 days to extract the information, send it over so that the leadership team can take a look at it, and then provide it to the committee by the 4th. So really, it's really only a 2-day
That's what I
window for them.
I just want to confirm with support that we get that information.
We were hopeful that by providing this preliminary information that the committee would be able to review, at least to date, what we have. And then so when we give you the stuff on the 3rd, it's not like you're starting from 600 comments you have to review. It'll just be the last piece.
I think one other comment I would just make is that these comments really run the gamut. Some people say something positive and say something negative within one comment. So which bucket do they fall in? So I think the more we try and internalize the comment rather than just leave it in the raw. I understand everyone's trying to get metrics and I can certainly appreciate that. I think reading through them, you'll start to see the trend then, it's difficult in some of these to put them in any one bucket.
Yeah, just I think there are good questions, but just to clarify, Mentimeter as a platform doesn't have a data analysis aspect for the qualitative data, does it?
Correct, it just depends on how the question is asked, and so it
Yeah,
won't
so-
do it on its own. Unfortunately.
Right, if I can just ask a similar question. The text box says, please tell us why you selected your preferred option, and reading through them, most of them are fairly obvious in terms of what their preferred option is. Not all of them are.
Right.
Does Mentimeter have a way of saying this comment relates to this preferred selection? And if so, can we see that at the final results? Because again, some of these, I'm reading through it and, it says what I said before. I don't know what they said before.
Right.
Or, students, what does that mean? So is there a way to tie the comment to their preferred selection of what type of school they're looking for?
Sure, so Mentimeter will not, I tried to do that for tonight, actually, with the preliminary, because the preference question is considered a ranking question. We were able to rank it. It does not allow me to link it to their response. So I could link it to how they responded as if they were a community member or parent. And so the packet you have today, you'll see that the colors are noted. And so it does allow us to do that, but because the other question was a ranked question, it won't allow you to link it. However, when we get when the survey closes, we'll be able to download an Excel spreadsheet. And in that Excel spreadsheet, we would then be able to isolate what was their first option and then what their comments were based on that. And so I won't be able to do that until after the first.
That's great, thank you.
Other questions on Mentimeter?
Will you be able to give us a exact number for each choice instead of a bar?
So we can say, so when the file gets exported, we can tell you how many people picked it as their number one option. Yes, that we can do.
Yeah, my question is related to that. So that in these bars, is it weighted by ranking so that like a first place, you have like 5 points, and if you were ranked second place, you have 4? I'm just curious how these, how these were chosen. Obviously, we can see in what order the sort of the most ranked option is.
Right.
But how did those, like, if it wasn't the first item that people picked, like their top choice, then how were the lower ranks determined? And what about if people didn't rank all? I think there were 3 options in the survey. rank or were there? all
There was
five?
five.
Could you rank all five, or, like, if some people only ranked some of them and didn't rank all five?
So we,
Like, a weight given,
so we didn't apply a weight, so it's only Mentimeter applies a weight, so I'd have to get back to you on that, to check in, but we do have that information when we extract the Excel spreadsheet at the end when it closes. So we would know if someone ranked, what they ranked first, we don't know who, because everything's anonymous, but we know that it was ranked first, something was ranked first, something was ranked second, and then it would just be blank if they didn't rank anything beyond that, for example. But as far as if it's weighted, it's just how Mentimeter ranks them. So I'd have to look into that, so we get an accurate answer.
Other questions on Mentimeter? In the survey thus far. So again, the provision of these are tonight it's partway through the cycle that we still have the window of time, but knowing that there's a lot of information that committee members certainly will want to peruse and review. Again, the effort to close this off on October 1st is to provide an opportunity again for members of the committee to see the results from this point in time until October 1st. You know, just maybe two other comments. It's encouraging. I hope members of the committee are encouraged by certainly an uptick in participation in this survey. And we've had quite a bit of conversation around the table about an effort to extend this deadline and to hear from community members. I was looking back a little while ago at the town's facilities master plan in 2018. There was, for those of you that were part of this, you'll recall this, there was a survey done that was part of that process. I think it was around 460 or so responses. So different project, but in comparison, and we still have a good window of time left. So I hope folks certainly feel good about the engagement of the community. And just anecdotally, you know, we meet as part of a leadership team. Mr. Slagle and I do with members of Durham Whittier and SMMA. And you know, they shared with us earlier today about these are numbers of community members' engagement in a project that is really not the type of numbers that they see in their respective projects. Far more engagement. So I think that's a good thing, and hopefully that you know is encouraging for folks here as part of the committee.
I think we get more.
Oh, I do too. Oh, I do too. Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, if outreach can, maybe there's another push we can do. We have 2 weeks before the survey closes, so maybe outreach,
yes,
do something like that week before, press releases the whole bit and
Yeah.
Is there a way to see inside, kind of what outreach might have, like, was there a spike after, like, we had our open houses with the comments, or after the 4th of July? Is there like a way for you to see, like, kind of when they were responding more?
Well, when we get the Excel spreadsheet, we know what date someone has responded, so we can see how many people responded after certain dates, so that we could tell.
I would say that sweet spot would be just after Labor Day, like 9/6, like September 6th was when it went out the door. So I would say like 6 through 10, would you say? 6 through 11 would be the range of when you should see the spike based on open houses, back to school, the flyers hitting homes. I would think you would see a spike at least there. And we kind of pushed it out when the flyers hit the home. Couple days after that, just so they had enough time to look at the flyer, and then they see the social media's posts and they.
Yes, I agree. I think, you know, just from kind of peeking in to the platform, there was definitely an uptick in the last week. So that makes sense.
Thanks, Ron.
So I know you have the packet in front of you, so you've probably seen some of this information, but I'll run through it since it's here. One thing to clarify with when we asked for what someone was who someone was responding in, we are indicating right now that we've had over 900 people respond. I just want to clarify. So in previous Mentimeters surveys that we've completed, we allowed for people to select more than one option. So if they were a parent and an administrator, or you know, a teacher and a community member, they could actually pick 2. With this survey, that was actually turned off, so they were only able to pick 1. So I just want to clarify that, because that was a point of confusion. And so for this question, we had over 900 people respond, which is, I think, fantastic. As as Dr. Brand mentioned, you know, this is far more than what we would see normally at the space. And a big change from previous surveys is how many community members. So when people were picking, you know, there's 487 which parents, and there's 401 community members, which that usually was a much bigger difference in previous surveys. As far as the preferred option, the new pre-K 5 at North still ranked first. The pre-K 3 and pre-K 5 are very, very close. For the pre-K 3 new at Woburn, and then the ad reno of the pre-K 5 at North. And on this one, we had about more than 700 people respond to this question. And another thing I'll clarify is that when someone's taking the survey, they don't have to respond to every question. So that's why you'll see a discrepancy in the number of responses. And also, I think there might be some survey fatigue, because as you get for the survey, you see less responders to the last question. So.
We're saying impressed the number of people who wrote a comment, because that was optional.
Correct.
So we have hundreds and almost more than half the people did write a comment.
Yes.
So we still think there's confusion around the pre-K 5 ad reno. I'm just surprised to see that spike. With the prices being pretty much exact versus the university ad. I don't even see many comments about it.
You know what I could do is, so when we're pulling the Excel spreadsheet and looking at that feedback, we'll be able to kind of isolate if someone picked it as their first option and what the comment is that's associated with it. So we can take a look at that. So you have all of the comments so far in front of you. There was definitely comments on consolidation, modern facilities, and then concerns about the increase in taxes and the changes on that. So, you know, as we said, we'll be taking a deeper dive after October 1st.
And well, that's about the comments I see. Do we know, probably Dr. Brand would be better to answer this. If a pre-K through 5 is picked, would the pickup times for that school be for every grade at the same time?
That's a great question. So we haven't gone down to too deep of a level of sort of analyzing what that would look like. However, I would say that it's highly likely, with the possible exception of the early childhood, the pre-kindergarten. That I could envision being an offsetting time. Their length of day is a little bit different, but otherwise, I think we would see certainly the ability for K to 5 to be aligned. You know, lots of school communities operate that type of facility, and they have, you know, unification in terms of the grade level start times, riding the bus, that kind of thing. So it's certainly not at all out of the norm, but I would anticipate that possibility with the pre-K maybe being slightly different, but otherwise, you know, alignment across the board.
Thank you.
And then the question about the larger gymnasium, again, this survey has a monetary value estimated for that cost. So community could understand that there was a cost to having the larger gymnasium. And there were still more than 70% of the responders responded that they were still in favor of a larger 12,000 square foot gymnasium. And we'll revisit this again in a couple of weeks.
I just wanted to point out that one of the takeaways for me, not just in this survey, the preliminary results, but every single time we've reached out to ask these questions, the answers have been very consistent for a very long time, all the way through, which isn't always the case.
Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks, Lee. So we're moving on to the right, correct? And number 6.
I have a question. Sure. Now, how many times can one person vote?
So every device can vote one time. So once you say, if I do it on my phone, if I try to do it again, it would say you've already taken the survey. That being said, a person could go do it on their phone and then go to their laptop and take it a second time. That's possible, but you know, we this is kind of on the honor system as best we can do. We are unfortunately, unless we were to gather either email addresses or some sort of like, you know, if we had names and we were checking them off, that we would be able to limit it somehow. But because we're trying to keep these anonymous, that's pretty much the best we can do. We limit one per device.
Is that, would you might consider the uptick? I mean, you had one survey with 104 people voting. Now you have this survey with about 1,000 people voting. And it seems to me that some people are voting twice, as one person mentioned in the survey. So I don't know how true this survey really is, if you're voting more than once. So it doesn't really hold much water.
If you look at one of the calculations I looked at was to see parents and community members. Results from the community forum number 4 versus this pre-result. And where you see the spike is in the community, which to me says that that's representative of the outreach that's been done with the mailers and all getting on Facebook. You know, there's been far more outreach and I think that that's a correlation.
I'm in favor of one person, one vote. But I can, you know, encourage everybody to go on 2 or 3 devices and uptick what they want. So I don't see this is a relevant survey at this point in time. I thought last time you had a question, I believe, at the last survey. I may be wrong, you can correct me, but was it one vote for the survey? The answer was yes.
Per device.
But per device with that as well?
Right. So it's always been limited to one survey per device. I think the only time that was different would be for the Fun on the Board, because they were using devices for people to be able to take the survey in person.
People use their own devices.
Oh, they did. So then, yeah.
The other thing is the data is moving the same direction every time. We're not seeing a huge spike in one area. It's still following the same pattern. So.
And so the big difference here is, you know, with the mailer that went out to every residence, right? So when that happens, you know, we're not limited to just those that are, you know, attending a meeting or logging into the community forum. You know, with any of the previous surveys, they somehow had to get to the information where this was sent to them. And based on the number of people that we're seeing, I'm hoping that people took it and, you know, scanned it and took the survey because it was on their mind right then. There's no guarantee on that, but I think the mailer was, based on the number of feedback that we already have, has been successful.
The mailer, and again, the open house where we had thousands of families, parent guardians who were flowing through our schools for open houses. Thanks to the town who helped and assisted in providing copies of those, the mailer that was out. So it was in front of an awful lot of people in the last number of weeks, sure.
So Ronnie, but just so you may have mentioned this earlier, but does this Excel spreadsheet, the CSV file, going to show you unique IP addresses or like as a unique visitor? Like full disclosure, I filled it out on the first day that it came out, but I scanned it. But as I sit here tonight, I can pull up the survey and start to fill it up again, the same device.
On your same device.
You know, so I don't want to do that because
So you're at a different IP address right now.
That's why I'm here at a different location.
So I think it's filtering out by IP.
So the point is, I'm saying you can go to work. Listen, I'm not looking to beat a dead horse here, but the fact of the matter is you can be at multiple different locations on the same device.
To some degree, this is, you know, it is not a scientific poll, right? It's a survey, so there's gonna be noise, much more noise even than, you know, than true political polling. But, you know, it's tough to say what impact it would have either way. I mean, I've seen 3 different instances of the word taxes exclamation point in here, maybe 4, you know, so it's just tough to see how it would impact. The noise is a margin of error in either direction, right? Plus 3%, plus, you know, one way or the other, so. And again, at the end of the day, we as a committee are not bound by this, but we are guided by it. So we have to decide, bearing all this in mind, all the information with which we've been presented is what the best course of action is, but I think there's a clear signal in the noise, even if we were to adjust for some degree of one way or the other margin, so.
So just for real-time evidence, I just tried filling the survey out again. I haven't filled it out from here, obviously, because it wasn't ready the last time we were here, and I'm getting a message saying you've already responded to this question. And the last time I did it was on my phone. So I don't know if it's an IP thing, I don't know if it's a device. I don't have an answer, but just as context, I can't do it twice from the same device, even from different locations.
Can we just, for the next meeting, just find out what the filter is, just so we know, so we can kind of, in our minds, put our own amount of weight on the survey and sharing it with them to October 8th.
Yeah, I'll do my best to find that answer for you.
Thank you.
One quick thing, I helped someone, they went on and the QR code was, I'm glad we're doing handouts for some of the seniors. The QR code, they logged in and then they goofed up and then they said they already did it and couldn't finish it. They didn't really answer questions. So then I said, well, go to your laptop. And now you can do it from there and you can do the whole thing. I helped them go through it. And they were able to answer everything. So if someone thought they could stop and go back, or if someone clicked the wrong thing and got knocked out, they may not have completed theirs, but like I said, I used it, they wanted to complete the whole thing. So I said, all right, to do that, go to a different device, log in, and you can now answer every question. And I think, I don't know how many seniors comfortable with QR code and how many would have done that. But I think handouts and then doing data entry afterwards may hopefully get a better feedback. I don't know if everyone's comfortable with technology.
Thanks, Dan.
Mr. Chair, if I could just, I don't think it's been mentioned tonight, but I think the flyer was outstanding. I mean, the final product was really well done. So there's been a lot of feedback around the flyer that went out to every house, and just want to put that out there. And a lot of people, Judy and others, were able to pull that together after our last meeting, and I think it was outstanding flyer.
Thanks for the feedback. Okay, moving on to item number 6, which is the topic of the gym. Correct? Am I jumping ahead?
We missed just
Oh,
community correspondence.
My apologies, sorry.
It's okay. Really quickly, in addition to all the public outreach that's been done by the Public Relations Working Group, we've also had an opportunity to hear from the community at large through our email address. And this past month, we've received 2 emails. We do highly encourage everyone to continue to send those. The email address is wildwoodprojectquestions@wpsk12.com. And we continue to use those questions to help us with the frequently asked questions on the website. We will be updating those shortly.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Are you able to just address these 2 items here on the record? One was, did the site get cleaned up? And the other one was, are we able to locate the gymnasium on the outside wall? Just so we can get it on the record and say that we've addressed it so it doesn't get lost.
We certainly can, as the plan develops, if that was the group's decision to have the gym on an outside wall, we can certainly design it that way.
And in terms of the Wildwood site and the oil spill, that was for you, Mr. Town Manager, to whoever, that wasn't completely filled up, it's completely abated, right?
That has been abated, yes. Completely abated, the site that has been fully cleaned up, yes.
Everything, we reacted that immediately, it was identified immediately. Yeah, LSP was on site and we were digging everything up. And they did test wells and made sure that there was no more contamination with this. Everything was clear before we pulled it back.
Thank you. Okay, now item number 6, the gymnasium space. As members of the committee and those watching in the community know, the current project, should it be that of a pre-K to 5 school, does include a 12,000 square foot gym, which is a high school size gym. In large part, the reason for the inclusion of that as a possibility in the pre-K to 5 school is because of the recognition that in all likelihood, although no certainty, and certainly not a decision that the town or any building reuse committee has made, if it was to be a pre-K to 5 school, then it could well lead to the closure of the remaining or the other elementary schools. The initial feedback through the visioning process that happened in the fall, of which we had well over 50 members of the community who participated in that, including parents, guardians, community members, town and school leaders, et cetera, identified that as an asset in such a project should it move forward. And that's why the 12,000 square foot gymnasium is currently being carried in a pre-K to 5 school. This is not jumping to an end, and just to stress for those that are tuning in, there's been no decision by this committee made on a pre-K to 5 school, but it is an important decision relative to the project and the total number of square footage that such a project would have. The question of gym availability has thus come forward in terms of what would that mean if theoretically 2 of our other elementary schools were closed with 1 building just operating. Would an elementary sized gymnasium space be sufficient to support parks and recreation programming, as well as elementary education programming and so on? So there's a couple of things to this issue. We've got a lot of data that was shared with you from our, we'll call it our reservations and our building use that you have. It's a lot to work through, certainly, but you can get a sense if you have, or when you do take a look at that, of the extensive use of our gym facilities at the elementary level. But better to go to the source and some gentlemen who are much more closely aligned with the day-to-day, month-to-month use of these facilities. Tonight we have Dennis Ingram, who is the Director of Athletics for the Wilmington Public Schools. We have Brett Swain, the Recreation Director for the town, and Peter Odovic. I hope I said your last name, Peter, correctly, who I know is also involved in scheduling. So to the extent that these gentlemen can certainly add members of the committee with insight in terms of what the building uses, what the gymnasium use looks like, they're here to offer any comments or feedback and certainly take any questions from the committee on 12,000 square foot gym, the implications of all of the above.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having myself, Dennis, and Peter here. So just to share a little bit of background on the recreation side of things, we use pretty much all the gyms in town for a number of programs, especially in winter. Gym space is really at a premium, I'd say, starting in November through March. We love to be outside, but obviously this is New England and we do have to go inside for a few months. We run a number of programs. I know you guys have a bunch of decisions to be made. You know, I guess I'll focus on if a pre-K to 5 school is built in place of potentially 3 others, I would say. When you look at the ones that would replace the North, the Woburn, and the Wildwood, we predominantly use the North and the Woburn Street. The North we use for a number of basketball programs in the winter. Woburn Street is pretty much used by pickleball exclusively in my department. I know some of you here play pickleball as well. So we're there in each gym at least 4 nights a week. And so they're really highly used. We're not the only show in town, I would say. I know Dennis has a number of sports in some of the elementary school gyms as well. There are also other entities in town, travel basketball, other programs as well that use it extensively. So, you know, there is a pecking order to the gyms. I'd say the number that we have now is sufficient. We'd always like more space. But if we do lose a gym, you know, we may have to consider cutting some programs because there just won't be enough space to go around. Dennis, no.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. Just to add on a little bit, it's always a balancing act, trying to get everybody into the gym. The gym space is tight. Pretty much around November, most of the gyms are occupied from dismissal until mostly 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. If we were to move forward with this 12,000 square foot gymnasium, would definitely benefit Wilmington High School athletics. We have some sports that are doubling up in gyms. We're being creative and using the cafeteria of some buildings for practice. So we would definitely benefit from a 12,000 square foot gym.
Just restate what you just said. You're using cafeterias for practice right now.
We have, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You know, there's certain situations where, you know, Dennis has to reschedule games and, you know, that impacts us, that impacts travel basketball or other groups there. You know, there is a pecking order. Dennis kind of gets first right to the gym space, which rightfully so. We fall in line next, and then the other groups kind of work around our schedule. We try to be really respectful of one another to try to give everyone the amount of time that they need. You know, I have a list here from travel basketball. They sent it recently. You know, they're looking for practice time Monday through Friday, not just in the gyms that we're talking about, but all across town. So it is tight right now. We make it work, but taking away a gym, you know, it would hurt the programs a lot, I would say.
Were there any Wildwood activities that got absorbed by the middle school in the west as a result of shutting down the Wildwood?
We didn't use the Wildwood for any of our activities since I've been here a little over 5 years. We never used the school. But I don't think that
did not impact us
at all.
Like, so it would just be after school care. Just to go back to your point that you said that using the cafeteria, even if a 12,000 square foot gym, I think it's still be in the same situation. Yeah,
Right, but I would imagine that if you had a gym that size, you probably have 3 dividers where you could divide the gym from one full space into 3 individual spaces.
Well, that would be my next question. Is that
Correct.
what we're planning at this point with the gym, is to have it?
That is how a 12,000 square foot gym, we're planning to break that into
have
3 stages.
dividers built in that-
Yeah, and one other thing is, we spent a lot of time with Brett and Dennis moving equipment, mats around from building to building where they, you know, they may be practicing at the high school, now they gotta practice. And we move all the mats over to the North Intermediate and the cafeteria. So our department helps facilitate moves for all that, and I would think that Dennis could keep a lot of that stuff at the buildings opposed to us moving that, which is a benefit there as well. And I got a question, obviously CARES takes a lot of time in there in the morning and the afternoon, but with 7 grades in the same building, how would you coordinate gym with a larger gym and, you know, the cut in half? Like if you end up with 7 grades and had your gym class for all those people?
Well, as I understand, CARES right now does not just use gym space, right? They use classroom space, they use cafeteria space in buildings that have that. So knowing that the cafeteria would be pretty extensive if it were to be a pre-K to 5 building, knowing there would be classroom spaces. There certainly would be like a multitude of spaces that could be used for that after-school programming, such that gym space would still be available.
What about during the regular school day to get 7 grades of gym class as part of your PE program?
Yeah, so a great question. We, just to clarify again, the 12,000 square foot gym is not at all believed to be necessary. It's not necessary for educational programming. And we've done the calculations through scheduling, or mock schedules or looked at schedules. So the 12,000 square foot gym is not a necessity for educational programming. We can make it work in a more traditional elementary size gym. It's really a community decision, right? This aspect of thinking about contemplating a 12,000 square foot gymnasium in a pre-K to 5 school would come down to perceived benefits for the community.
Just wanted to add a few pieces of information if I could. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Peter Rodovic. I had the pleasure of living in Wilmington for over 37 years. During that time, I've had the pleasure of coaching my kids and maybe some of yours in basketball and baseball. And over the last 20 plus years, I've had the pleasure of working with Brett in the recreation department, coaching basketball, running clinics, refereeing. Currently today, I still do that, as well as supervise an adult over 35 program. And gym space has always been at a premium. In addition to that, I've worked with Dennis over the years too. Sometimes when spring comes, depending on the winter, the town has a delay in releasing the fields for use outside. Consequently, it backlogs. It's not just the winter time that the gyms are at a premium for space, but come the spring, until the towns release the fields, the gyms are again at a premium because the spring sports can't go outside on the fields. So they're also creating a backlog in the demand for the gyms. So just one person's opinion, we can't have too much gym space, and I would go for at least 12,000. I wish we had more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For members of the committee, any other questions for our gentleman here tonight? Any other questions or comments regarding the gym?
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Thanks so much. Any other, Lee, not to put you on the spot, any other comments or thoughts for this committee relative to the gym as we look ahead to the October 8th meeting?
I think I've mentioned it before. We would be looking for the committee to make a decision one way or another on the size of the gym before we started the schematic design phase, just because obviously it's a very consequential piece of what we're doing with setting up the layout of the building. So it is a decision that's upcoming. Looking for that decision before we get into SD.
Thank you. Okay, item number 7 tonight is titled Open Discussion of Options, and just some context for this. It's as the leadership team met, and again, as a reminder, we collectively with the town, and representatives from the town manager's office and my office and our design firm and OPM, we get together and we take a look at the development of these agendas. And when it came to developing tonight's agenda, we recognized that as we're getting far closer to the need for asking the committee to make a decision, we are a public body. We're working very, very hard to abide by all of the open meeting laws relevant to public body activity in the Commonwealth. But we can't really just easily certainly have open discussions unless there's an opportunity and time to facilitate that. And so that's really the intention of item number 7 tonight. We know that there's a lot of information that is swirling around that's been presented and shared with you. It certainly feeds into the next item of committee questions. We're at a point in time that the leadership team recognizes we want to make sure that the committee at large here has the information you need to make a decision, the questions answered that you might have to make an informed decision. And so that's really the spirit of these next 2 agenda items tonight as we look to the fact that the next time we'll be together as a committee, it will be the time in which you're asked to make a decision on this project. So I throw that open for thoughts, discussion, either about the options themselves or questions that you may have as a member of the committee as you continue to gather the information that you believe you might need to best make a decision.
I'll ask it quickly. And I'm sorry that I looked this up in advance, going back a couple meetings, but the rent, pre-K-5 ad reno, given a lot of that would be added on to the north. Like how much again was put into creating separate spaces, with the community space and the studying space, and there's those points of egress and ingress where there's a level of safety added. How much would the renovation account for that, right? Creating that real separation from where the kids are and where the community can be. I just would hope to revisit that before we make a decision.
Sure, and we can review that again on the 8th, but generally speaking, that was our primary objective in any of the options we looked at. We talked about that at length of separation of public spaces and academic where the kids are. And each of the options address those a little bit differently. Obviously, the new construction was a clean canvas and you're able to do that ideally. In the PSR, the preferred schematic report, the updates from the first iterations that we did, we were more successful on the renovation plans and trying to get that worked out. And that would be something that we would continue to do through the design process. But we got to a level of confidence where we thought we could separate those pretty well in the additional renovation options.
Thanks, Nick.
I just have one question. So to Dr. Brand, as we worked through this process in the last year, have there been any changes in forecasting student enrollments or any impacts that you've seen or any updated numbers that have gone into your plan, or is it really not changed? Has there been a meaningful change?
That's a great question, but it can't change relative to how this process works and I'll use the term locking down. I'm not sure that that's the term that is actually used by MSBA, but those numbers that we have profiled or shared for you for some time have not changed. If one were to take a look back at the original inception of as far back as we go, those enrollment numbers, I don't have those handy. I don't think we have them here, but they can't change. There was just as a reminder, at the outset of the process, there was quite a lot of back and forth between the district and the MSBA regarding their calculus of enrollment projections. And there was some back and forth involved. I know I was intimately involved in that, but And we got to a point where there had to be agreement on what those enrollment numbers would be, hence why you see the three different numbers that have been consistently carried as part of the project. So they have not changed. Even if we were to have a significant new building project come online, let's say that would be in the catchment area of one of these schools, next year, next month, that still could not change these enrollment numbers. It would be a reality that we would, as a town and school department, have to contend with. But the building and its design and enrollment capacity it is locked in.
Correct. Thank you. A follow-up question for Lee. I think at one point we talked about, maybe Jason, based on the breakdown enrollments of the classes, there was maybe some additional classrooms potentially in the calculus. Is that the case? Is each classroom maximized for number of students based on, say, the 755 enrollment, or are there other classrooms that each room is a few students less than maximum or?
Correct. So we worked at trying to refine that between the kind of the early phase and this last round that we did. And we were able to eliminate some classrooms, right? We're shooting for an 80% utilization rate of classrooms. So I believe we were able to eliminate an art space and a music space once we ran through scheduling scenarios. And I think in one of the configurations, we had a flex classroom, right? Because we were trying to downsize, but be able to have that space. The other consideration when it has to do with enrollments is a lot of it has to do with the site planning, where we put the building on the site, and in the future, where could you add on space? Some discussion about where the gym is located on an outside wall. Perhaps that's for potentially a future addition, classroom infrastructure. So as part of this next phase, it's an MSBA requirement too. We have to be thinking ahead of, if you did need to expand this building, how would you do and where would you do it? And we actually have to show it on the plans.
So you said 80% utilization. So that basically is 80% occupied is what it's averaging. I know different grades will fluctuate.
Please. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Do you know if MSBA in factoring the student enrollment, or the town student factoring the student enrollment in the coming years, took into consideration the MBTA Communities Housing Act and the potential of, maybe hundreds, if not 1,000 housing units in town?
Yeah, I can't speak directly to the kind of algorithm the MSBA uses with helping develop those projections, but I do know they looked at historic and future permitting that's in the town pipeline, and that was taken into consideration. Whether they specifically looked at MBTA projects.
I know it's not supposed to have a substantial impact, and they're smaller units and for, couples, et cetera, but I can't help but think that there is going to be an impact on schools if and when that comes to fruition long term.
I should just add to that quickly. So during that process, MSBA did a 10-year enrollment projection. We went back and forth with them a couple times. At one point, we had to give them any housing developments we knew about.
Yes.
After we had submitted numbers, another housing development became aware of, went back to them, and they did adjust the enrollment numbers up a little bit, whatever calculation they do, what number of units, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, how many students. Okay. So they did adjust at that time a couple of times for us with the information that we had before we signed off on the certified enrollment.
Thanks.
Question through Mr. Chair, Mr. Slagle. So I think you mentioned that the debt exclusion would have a declining debt payment over the 30 years.
That's correct.
Of it. Can you talk a little bit about the different considerations for how the payments are structured in terms of kind of like declining versus something that's
Yes, so the most frequent historically debt profile for a project of this size is the declining debt profile. So you're talking about a fixed principal payment and your interest starts off large and reduces over the course of 30 years. So your payments are around half at the end of the 30-year project as they are in the beginning. Other communities, especially as prices have increased, have started to consider a flat payment profile, which looks more like your mortgage payment. So it's the same every month. So it'd be the same every year for 30 years. That has its pros and cons. The pros are there's not the large increase in year one decreasing. It's all of the increase is more mitigated. The con is you pay more interest because you're not paying off your principal as fast. So over the 30-year profile, the total payments are higher. Ultimately, the determination is, should a project go forward and we do have a debt exclusion, the determination as to how we're going to borrow this money is going to be one that's made, in discussions with the select board and the finance committee and the finance director and myself to try to figure out what makes the most sense for Wilmington at the time. We use this number because this is the kind of the most typical payment structure, but those are basically the two separate options, and there is an alternative that if we came together and decided to do it in a different way, we could potentially reduce the first year impact with understanding that over the course of 30 years, the town would end up paying a little bit more in interest.
Do we have any liabilities that would be rolling off of their cliff, if you will, as we would be introducing this debt such that you would have some kind of an offset?
So the only significant debt liability that the town has right now is the high school. And I believe that's coming off in 2037. And so right now that's $2.3 million a year. It is on a declining payment schedule. So that's going to be slightly reduced over the next 10 years. But that one will be coming off gradually for the next 11 and then totally in 2037. Which, if you're looking at the largest option here, the pre-K through 5, which starts off at I think a $9 million payment. It's, around a quarter, a little bit less than a quarter of the payment would be dropping off after 11 years.
So, couple of comments, if I may, just to kind of help with some of the questions. One thing that I had picked up in the community through some feedback is there had been some inquiry about in looking at the school, if we actually have debt associated with the town hall school administration, as well as the new senior center. So I think it bears repeating that the payments for those projects are being handled through the normal operating budget. And there is some misconception amongst a few out in the community that we're already paying debt on those two projects, and then this is going to be an additional third expense. That is not the case. So I think it may be beneficial in the public forum to maybe have that as a talking point, just to reiterate that to the public, if you could take that into consideration, to have that as part of your speaking points. That's just a suggestion. And to Mr. Millerani's question regarding metrics, I was able to get those from our IT director. We have 1,900 subscribers on the Wilmington Facebook page for the town of Wilmington. We have 634 subscribers on our Instagram page. We have 3,026 subscribers on X, and then we have 2,941 subscribers on the town of Wilmington website.
Thank you.
So that's our reach. And I can send these out in an email.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have we utilized the town emails, sending out information?
We have not, but that is a consideration that's been up for discussion. And we would need to revisit that. We talked about the Everbridge, we talked about a few things, but we can certainly discuss how we would do that.
Other questions or points of discussion on the options? Okay. If there are not, we'll move on to item number 9, which is voting logistics for the October 8th meeting. That is our next meeting of the committee. And also the timeline in which the committee has been asked to make a decision on this project. Just as a point of reminder, this is the date that we need to really comply with in order to allow our design team to move forward and prepare the necessary materials to meet the deadline that MSBA has given us now with the extension for the project. So A lot of thought that went into this, and this was also a date selected just as a friendly reminder based upon the availability of the majority of the members at large here on this committee. So that is October the 8th. As I shared with you previously, unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town, not able to attend that meeting in person physically that evening. I do intend to join remotely, but because of my situation, I've asked Vivian, our vice chair, to serve in my place that evening. She and I have had a number of discussions about that meeting and wanting to have an opportunity to share with the members of this committee tonight how best to structure that meeting, the logistics of, if you will, of the October 8th meeting. So what we'd like to do is to share with you as a committee our current thinking about how that meeting might flow, how it might move along, to get a sense of this committee, if that seems like an appropriate direction to take. And then with your feedback, we'll formalize that as an agenda for October the 8th. We want to make sure that that goes as it needs to be able to get to a final decision, which is of course what our charge is for that night. Vivian, are you still with us?
Yes, of course. Can you
add-
hear me, Dr. Brand?
Yes. Do you want to add anything else in there for context? And I have our notes we can run through here quickly.
Sure. As Dr. Brand mentioned, we have had several conversations regarding the format and the structure for October 8th, understanding that it will be slightly different than the presentations and the meetings that we've had thus far. In relation to, we've already by October 8th, in hopes that everyone has had plenty of opportunity to review all the various options, as well as the pricing and the costs that are associated with each of the items and the options. And so we would like to begin the meeting with just a one-page overview of the options that remain, as well as a review of the final survey responses that we will be receiving. As a point of note, that the survey will be closing on October 1st. So from now till October 1st, I'm sure we will be garnering more survey results, especially with the community forum coming up tomorrow night, as well as the senior center presentation. And once the survey closes on October 1st, we will be able to present the final results on October 8th. The intent is to afterwards open it up, unlike where we normally have been doing it in our regularly scheduled school building committees, open the forum up to public comments. Granted, we will only allow for a specific amount of time, but we would like to hear from those in the audience that do wish to attend, or in person or virtually, to provide some context and to give some public comments of support of one of the options or another. And the format intent would be to start the elimination process. And this is by having discussions on, the various options that are presented. I'll give an example as one for the pre-KK option. There's an option for a renovation as well as for a new. And based off of conversation, we would eliminate one of those and then go to the next grouping and to the next until we start to narrow down all of these options into more closer to 3 that we want to continue having conversations on. And through the conversations, we can start eliminating some of them or one of them and making sure that there's 2 that are up for discussion at all times. Once we have narrowed it down to 1 or 2 based on the format and the ebbs and flow of the committee and the conversation, we will look to reduce it further until we have a consensus or a majority. Once we have a majority, I think then it would be suitable to open it up for someone asking to make a motion. But up until that point, we want to give enough time, thoughtfulness, and discussion to all of the options and making sure that each committee member is well heard and expresses their concerns, comments, and suggestions to move forward before making a motion. With that, as soon as we have a majority and a motion on the table, we can still have further discussion based on public procurement laws and until we feel comfortable to make a final vote. And at that point, we'll go around the room asking for everyone's vote. This is one way in discussion, we felt that it would give enough attention, enough detail, and enough opportunity for all members of the school building committee to be heard and express their preferred option.
Thanks, Vivian. So a lot there, but again, in the spirit of trying to gather a sense of the committee on that proposal, and it should be taken as just that, a proposal, but we do want to go into that meeting, with a plan and one that members of the committee can be comfortable with. So again, just to reiterate very quickly, the thought for that agenda would be first to start with a brief review of the options, followed by the final survey results, of which, as we've discussed earlier tonight, you'll have in hand, but certainly for the benefit of the community to be able to see but you'll have that information in advance of that meeting. That would then be followed by public comments, an opportunity for those in attendance to share their thoughts and feedback with the committee before any decision is made. And then that process of elimination that Vivian outlined in a little bit greater detail. So I'll pause there. Very happy to hear your thoughts and feedback. Christine.
Question, when you get to the final vote, is it a yes, no on that one option? So if you did not agree, you don't vote for something else that was ruled out?
Correct. It would be based on the elimination process. We would have ultimately one or two that we would be discussing, but once the motion is made, it is made for one particular option that would be voted on.
I'd like to sort of talk through a little bit how this elimination process might happen logistically, because unless we're going around trying to get like a sense of the committee or asking to eliminate options without objections, how else would we do it without votes to eliminate certain options?
We would definitely, very good question. And the thought process there was that it wouldn't be a formalized vote as in how we would do so at the end when there's a motion made, but it would be more of, do we all agree, kind of like just a quick nod of the head or a raise of the hand that yes, we agree to eliminate option A. And that would be stricken. So now moving on to the remainder of the options, at least that's the thought.
So if the option comes down to the final vote and it's denied or you're voting against it, do you then go back to another preferred option? So
I'm hoping.
But I'm asking if the people vote against the pre-K to 5, do you go to another preferred option? Because I think that's
yeah. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Vivian.
no, we're hoping that through spirited conversation, we're not putting a motion on the table that won't get majority support. And if we don't have one, that means further conversation is still needed to be had. In the hopes is that by the time we get to an actual motion being made, majority are in a consensus of approving that option forward.
So the answer would be no. You don't have another choice if that says, if we all vote no against that option, then you're saying that there's not another choice to make. Because you're hoping.
Sorry, I apologize. We keep talking over each other. The intent is that if the majority of the individuals of the school building committee are going to be voting no for that option, then that option shouldn't be brought up with a motion to move it forward. We'd like to have a conversation and a discussion before the motion is even made and start the elimination process before the motion is made. Therefore, if a motion is made, then that means that the majority of the school building committee would be voting to approve that option forward.
Just to back up, the elimination process, would that be a vote also in the committee?
It wouldn't be a formalized vote without, it would be a vote, but without a motion being made,
I guess you could.
kind of like a straw vote.
You don't have to.
Yeah, that's a good point. You could, but you don't have to.
And it's an in-person vote only. So if you aren't gonna make the meeting, you don't get a vote. All right, so that.
It could be a hybrid, I believe it's gonna be a hybrid meeting, you're allowed to vote by Zoom.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
That if we have trouble with technology or something, could that affect? the
Yeah, that's a
votes?
good question, and correct me if I'm wrong, but town council weighed in on this.
So you cannot vote by proxy. If you're not you're not in the meeting physically or on Zoom, you would not be allowed to vote. But hybrid meetings with Zoom participation are legal and the votes are binding, yes.
In addition, there's no residency requirement for every member that's part of the committee is a voting member as well.
We need to define what majority is.
In terms of actual number for the committee, we certainly can, yeah, the number is.
Doesn't it depend on
Well,
what
who's the quorum is, but if full.
Wouldn't the number majority be determined by the number of attendees?
Yes.
Yes,
Half plus one,
yes.
typically.
Every member of this committee is a voting member, just a good point to clarify. Other thoughts, suggestions?
And will the straw vote for all the options, will that be roll call and? Will that be a roll call?
Our thought would be that it should be a roll call consistent with how we've approached other votes.
Okay, thank you.
So Tracy, the straw votes, because that it would. I don't know if that would necessarily be.
Yeah.
That's technically a binding vote if you're doing a roll.
Right, since it would be a binding vote if you do a roll call, the intent for the straw vote would be for a raise of hand or digital hand for those attending it virtually. That they would be either in favor or not to eliminate a option.
Sorry.
Thank you. May I just suggest that after public comment comes time for the vote, all the other business has been taken up, that someone just offer a motion that they're inclined to make, and we vote on that motion.
Thank you.
We would like to have the opportunity to have a discussion. I don't think as a school building committee, we've ever had an open conversation about all of the options. We've been presented with them. We've been presented with costs as well as survey responses, but I don't think we've had an opportunity to have an open conversation about it. So the intent or the desire was to be able to have an open space for school building committee members to provide their feedback or their perspectives and thoughts.
Respectfully, I'm pointing to item number 7 this evening. It says open discussion of options.
Understood. Yeah.
I just don't want to complicate things. If there's someone's inclined to make a motion come October 8th, let's take up the motion. If you don't want to vote for it, then vote no. There's also discussion after the motion is seconded. So therefore, if someone was opposed to that particular motion, they could be heard under discussion before the vote is called.
Hey, and let me add on to that, and if it fails, then you have the opportunity to put another option forward. But this way here, your process that you're presenting to us now, we have no other choice. So it doesn't make sense to me. If someone wants a particular option, make a motion, get it seconded, have discussion and take a vote and be done with it. Going through this whole thing, we've all sat here for how many months and years? I mean, I think everybody knows which way they're gonna vote, just like they do with the presidential election. Let's be done with it. Let's take the vote.
Other thoughts and feedback? Thank you, Mr. Carter. Thank you, Mr. Bendel.
Technically, like, going, maybe discussing the options, but not just taking them off the table. It should be left open for the whole meeting if someone wants to. Make a motion to vote on a particular.
I'm not sure who was next. I'm sorry, but
I think the intent, honestly, in our leadership group was to determine what is the best way to eliminate options. And I think you can go either way. It's really gonna flow organically. You're gonna come into the room, someone may make a recommendation to, you know, remove an option. And then I think that'll go from there. And as Mr. Bendel and Mr. Kyra said, someone may just throw out an option. They might just say, let's make a motion to accept option A. And then you kind of will go from there. I think that what the intent with Vivian was sharing with you was just to say, hey, here's an opportunity of how we can do it. But the reality is when you're in that moment, it's gonna flow organically. So I don't know that anyone really wants to overthink how this process will go. I think it was just an opportunity to say, hey, if there's some that we don't want, that we want to take off the table, the reality is there are 9 options. There's not just 5. So those ones for cost comparison, you may walk right in and say, okay, anything for cost comparison, we're gonna take right off the board, remove them. We're just gonna go with the 5. And you can kind of flow.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Julie. That was the sentiment.
There were a few other folks I think wanted to maybe.
Yeah, I definitely share the initial reaction that my colleagues here are having, that this adds a degree of complexity to what's already a really complex process, but I can see, however, that it's from the spirit of reducing complexity. So that all leads to me asking, in your experience, have other communities done that, where they've kind of placed in advance a kind of process to change how they're gonna do the voting? Very unknown, but.
Yeah, no, in other communities, I mean, we don't typically go into, you know, one of these events with just one option. You know, there's typically multiple options, and it could be the position on a site or a different location for a school. And people typically will go in right off the bat knowing, you know, we don't want that one. Like, we already know we don't want that, but it's still on the table. And so typically they do try and, they do try and remove something.
They try to narrow down the options that are left on the table to have the conversation regarding.
Because we have 9 and they're in,
Right.
so it would take hours.
So, I mean, normally we have like 3 and it's
Right.
pretty simple,
Okay.
but this is a little bit more complex, so.
Mr. Ransom.
I'd like to suggest perhaps a bit of a compromise between these positions. I think that, especially if we're truly going to be thinking about starting from 9, that we can probably eliminate some options just essentially almost by consent. That there can, does anyone object to leaving these options to the side? And kind of once we've disposed of ones that we really have no interest in talking about and pursuing, then at that point, the options that we preserved, someone can make a motion and, you know, presumably seconded, and then we have debate on the motion, and that can be our robust debate over what we think the best option is, because people will vote accordingly to what they think the best option is and make their case for what that is. And therefore, we get a little bit of each one, where we start with everything, we get to kind of clear out some of the chaff. But then we're not it's not an endless game of musical chairs where it's just like, oh, and then there were 3, and then there were 2, and then.
But the motion will be for a specific.
Yes, motion
We're not gonna
is
be able to consider
Bendel's
other
suggestion.
options in that debate. We're only gonna be able to consider that option. I think that what my colleagues are concerned about is that once an option is taken off the table, and we reach a point where there's an impasse, can we put one of those options back on the table? Is that going to be?
But if they're gonna do that, we'll do what they're saying in the first one.
Yeah, why handcuff yourself? Why put yourself at a disadvantage? You have 9 options. If you didn't want 9 options, you should have eliminated them a long time ago. So make a preferred motion in a second and vote on it and get it over with. I mean, we don't need to stay here another 5 hours to discuss which ones we want to eliminate. Because if that first option doesn't go, you have 8 others to fall back on. But I don't get it, but.
I think what you said, somebody could withdraw that motion. If they present a motion and the discussion seems overwhelming that others are against that motion, maybe they withdraw that motion instead of going to vote with it, so that it could.
But the way it's set up now, we're gonna be removing options from the table before we even get to the motion.
So I think just to help, because, you know, being part of the leadership meeting and then also being here, is we have those discussions, and I talked, from past experience that, we would like to have a complete discussion, but the way public meetings operate and with parliamentary procedure, someone could be very impassioned and want to put a motion on the floor and rise to the level of cutting through the discussion, getting the preferred option out there, defending his or her position on it, after getting a second for discussion and making his or her pitch, and then seeing if people can follow suit, and that would immediately stimulate discussion. And then it immediately puts the onus on everybody in the room to participate in that discussion, and it's going to force people to talk that maybe have been reluctant to speak for one reason or another. I'm not saying people have to speak on things. People may just want to take their vote and be done with it and not have to articulate their reasons why. And that's your voting right to do that. People can withdraw their motions, they can bring it up for reconsideration. There's a lot of ways that you can particularly handle it. I think the key was to not come in to the 8th without having had a pre-discussion, so that this all unfolded on the 8th, and then it became a 10-hour meeting and everybody was disenchanted with each other. That this was done by design to try and get this all hashed out so that no one in the public can say that we didn't have a thoughtful process as to how this committee wanted to see this run. It's very difficult with 22 people to try and get consensus on the fly. So we clearly are hearing that that doesn't work, and it was intended to be a proposal. So I was not married to this idea. I'm not suggesting that it was not a good idea. I think it's just trying to be thoughtful and saying that we've gone to every corner of the room to discuss all of these options. But, for me, I already know what I need to know. I was, as a committee member on board with delaying for the community outreach and for what I thought was best for the town and for the town's people. I personally haven't wavered. I mean, I have wavered between two decisions, quite frankly. And, I've made up my mind and I'm ready to vote, and I'm letting this process go through for the betterment of all people. But I will say that the survey isn't gonna make my decision for me. It's gonna be the totality of all the discussions, my own experience, my own feelings on it, my research, my Q&A. And I think all of you are doing those same things. And we may not agree. I think the issue is that the one piece, which is just the nature of it, is hopefully the discussion will give people enough understanding of how people are gonna vote. Because there may be somebody that was going to vote on something and then they want to switch their vote because they want to get consensus and they want to walk out with the building option. That's the only thing, because we don't really know how people feel about it, because there hasn't really been a full around the table discussion. We don't know until the vote's actually called, unless that discussion is very fruitful. If we're going to come down by like one vote, that one option wins over the other. So that's the only thing that we won't necessarily be able to see. We might be able to see through fruitful discussion, we don't know. But it's clear, that rolling it out and eliminating things doesn't seem to be, the way people want to go, and that's fine. I mean, even if this was rolled out, someone technically from a parliamentary procedure standpoint could put a motion on the floor and bypass this plan and actually jump to the front and do that. Even with the best laid agenda, someone could technically put a motion on the floor. So not that I'm trying to coach people to kind of go against the grain, but it is a public meeting and you can do that, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Carter.
Just to that point, and it's a good point. Well, let's bring back number 7. Okay, at our next meeting, so we can all have a discussion on the options again, because I think it will give us more time. I can tell you that I'm getting feedback from the public, and one of the concerns is the price tag. And, we have to take that into consideration and be mindful of that. Because we're going to be going for a vote for a debt exclusion. Some people refer to it as an override, even though we know it's not, or, we know it's a debt exclusion. And I would like to have a brand new school, right? But I want one that we can win it. I don't want to pick a new school that the public is going to vote it down. So that you got to keep that in mind when you're doing this, because I've never gotten more feedback as a member of the Board of Selectmen, sometimes at a meeting, oh, I got a bunch of phone calls and let me tell you something, I got a bunch of feedback. And it's a real difficult choice for the people out there in this. So you've got to keep that in mind when you're coming here to vote. I think we need to have a real, another open discussion and then move forward with a recommendation and a motion. I'm just afraid, don't want to bite off too much. And I'm a little nervous on it, and I'd love to see a brand new school, but.
Eric, your first one.
Save my reservations as to which option I'd like at the next meeting if we're allowing it.
Sure, no, I was just gonna kind of echo a lot of what Judy said, which is. I think the goal here is to not put the committee in the decision in a position where of the 20 people who show up, 4 of them have chosen each one of the options. And so no option will ever win, because until you've had a discussion, you don't know whether or not you have one other person who agrees with you or 15 other person who agrees with you. And so someone just laying out a motion, my concern is that the members of the board won't have enough information on how the committee feels to take that vote, because I might choose option A as my first one, but if option A is not going to fly, option B is my second one, or maybe it's option C. And until we know whether option A is going to fly, or what the support is for my first option is, I don't know whether or not I should just let it go and move on to my next option, or whether I should pursue it. And I think it's possible, like Greg said, that if you can have that discussion as a part of a motion. I think we just need to make sure that as a committee, we're committed to making sure that we can have that discussion and not try to shortcut the discussion. And maybe it's like Kevin said, maybe we need to make sure that we put this open discussion of options back on the table before a vote and convince everyone to actually have their open discussion of options. And maybe it is for us to all be really mindful about the fact that when we are if there is a motion, that it's a motion for discussion, and we're going to allow a robust discussion about whether or not we like this option, or whether we think I want to add Reno instead of a new school or something like that, before we try to push parliamentary procedure to have a determination. I would just want to make sure that we can have some consensus building before we get to a vote, and that's my intention.
And I was just saying, I think that was the general spirit, and we're sort of now terming it an open discussion of the option. But I think that was maybe a more nuanced way to try and get through that from what Vivian and I had talked about. But ultimately, to me, it is just what we're talking about here, and that is an open discussion about the options. But Greg,
thank you. Yeah, one of the things I'm pretty confident about is that there will be a unanimous vote here come the 8th, for everyone's going to vote for a new school. I don't think anybody here is opposed to one of these options. I think everybody here has worked really hard. The person around me has worked really hard, put a lot of time and effort into this. So obviously that will be unanimous. We may differ on what option, but every person here is here for a reason. But I'm reminded of other really big decisions we've made, 2024. Multiple candidates for town manager. 2017, right in this room, we voted to recommend Dr. Brand. We didn't, take a straw poll before that. Someone nominated him, and yes, I was one of the people who voted for it, by the way. Also with SMA and Dora Whitty, right? We had other candidates for those positions, and someone put forth a motion and we voted. Those were all equal big decisions that the town has made, and I think we ought to operate in the same way. I have no objections if we want to have a discussion, but prior to, absolutely, let's do it.
Dennis.
Well, we got the public forum tomorrow night. People could come, have things we haven't talked about, things we didn't think about. And that may, having a conversation before we vote, those things could come into play on someone's vote. It all depends how many people show up, but I think we've covered every avenue you could on all these, but again, get some input from the people tomorrow night could definitely increase the discussion before we vote.
Like that, and actually, Greg kind of said to the point. For example, I know I'm in favor of a new school, I'm still between two options, I haven't made my mind up, I want to pick the option that will pass at a debt exclusion. So if I think one option goes one way, and depending on the feedback I hear, and again, tomorrow we have more people, that feedback is gonna impact which way I tend to vote.
Christie.
For those of us who are not well versed in public meetings, could we have handouts in front of us with how to make a motion and what that language would be so that everybody has the opportunity if they want it?
Good suggestion, and yes, I'm sure we
can do
can.
that for you.
It's something, yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, anything else further? Covered a lot of ground there, but I do appreciate the discussion. It is certainly a very important decision, and I think this was good to have, so thank you. Item number 10 is new items. Any other new items that we did not talk about this evening we wanted to bring forward? Yes, want to talk about that later?
Sure. I can just bring up a question because I'm not completely up to speed with it, but in other communities, obviously this question comes up about taxes and how expensive these projects are, but I think there's a program in Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken, called Circuit Breaker, that some members of the community could, depending on income thresholds, be able to participate in that program, and it may eliminate increases in some of this stuff. And I'm not completely familiar with it, and maybe the finance committee or some folks from the town might know more about that.
Very minor population.
Okay.
But it's certainly something we can bring up and try to educate the folks who are, it's for seniors, it's income contingent, you have to have a house, your house value is also a parting factor, but if you were eligible and haven't signed up for it, it could help you, eliminate a significant portion of your taxes, regardless of what the aesthetics is. So go out there and fill out your forms.
Okay, any other new items? Okay, thank you, Lee. That brings us to item number 11, which is public comments tonight. There are members, we do have, for those watching, some members who are here in person. We'll start with them if there's anyone here tonight who might wish to make a public comment. Hi, yes, sir.
My name is John Brady, 59 years in the town. And I just want to commend the other committee here. I haven't followed this because I've been ill, and but I commend the committee for doing such a fine job and trying to straighten out the problems within the town as far as education is concerned. But this project is mighty big. I don't have to tell you that. And you've been working at it for quite a while. I can see that. The burden to the taxpayers, both the state-wise and the town-wise, is severe. Regardless of the options, the millions of dollars is there in this day and age. I want to look at the big picture. Our country in Washington is in flux. Our state has got a problem because of immigration. The debt, they've used up all the surplus. Now they're going into debt. Okay? I mean, you could just say, oh, it's not going to affect us. We're going to get what we want. But these are factual things that are happening out there. Our town has several projects going on, big projects. We got a new town hall, we got a new senior center. These are all burdens on the community. Also, we have this school right here still being paid for. Other debts that I don't even know of, I'm not privy to. But let's look at the projects. Let's look at the debt that we're putting on the taxpayers of this town. As I look at this mega project, it really comes at a bad time. Comes at a bad time because of all the issues that are out there. And I have concern for the taxpayers, being a taxpayer myself. Yeah, I used to have a business in town, but I lost it because of my health. But I know the tax burden to the building that I owned. You know, this is my concern. We're putting a burden on people in this town who are struggling to pay taxes, support their families at a time when prices are up so high. Look at it. Look at what's happening in the world. Look what's happening all around us. It's taxes. This man had brought up an article, brought up the point that he's hearing from taxpayers. I'm speaking for taxpayers out there. And I'm sure you're getting comments from taxpayers. How about the taxpayers that don't make comments because they're working extra overtime just to live? Okay, that's my comments. And I'm gonna try to be involved, especially I can because not health-wise, I got problems. But I'm gonna try to get involved and speak for the taxpayers, the ones that don't go to the meeting. And there's a lot of people that don't go to meetings that suffer just to pay their taxes. Taxes have risen every year because of things that are happening within the cost of things. You're gonna add on because of your project. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do, but these buildings are still operating. The kids are still getting an education. It can wait, it can be postponed if necessary. The world's not gonna end because this project is gonna be extended a little bit further. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Other members of the public, Stephen?
Stephen Turner, 59 Washington Avenue. This is substantially similar to something I said at the select board at your prior meeting, but I wanted to repeat here as well. So I do really want to thank all of you for the amazing amount of time and effort you spent on this. It is excellent to see the work, see the collaboration, see how you guys are trying to move forward with what's best for the town. So there are two topics that are at the heart of this. One is doing what's best to ensure the future generations of Wilmington students have the best education and the best environment for learning. And the second is doing what's most responsible for the finances of the town and specifically the taxpayers. It is clear that the pre-built schools in discussion here are physically old, far from accessible, and difficult to maintain. We do a great job maintaining them, but they are difficult to maintain. It's also very clear the buildings are not built to support the educational needs of our students. We have students receiving education in hallways. We have students receiving education in former closets. The educational needs of students are better understood now than they were in the 50s and 60s. We understand what it needs to happen for students. A newer building will support the educational needs. It aligns with what the parents of the town expect, and it aligns with what parents of the town who might move in with younger children, future generations in the school would expect as well. And having 3 separate elementary schools across the north side of town compounds several issues. One is disruptive transition for the students. 2, it's additional time and cost for busing. And 3, it leads to inefficient staffing. We have staff who spend part of the day they should spend in front of students in their cars. That doesn't make sense. It's not good for the students. It's not good for us. So it is clear that fewer building projects are cheaper. Stated simply, one project for the total scope of the education we're trying to serve will always be cheaper than 2 or 3. So we can spend more and do 2 or 3 year projects over many years. But no matter how you do the math, and certainly the longer you delay, the more it impacts. Building costs get more expensive every day we wait. So building a consolidated pre-K to 5 school does both what is right for the future of generations of Wilmington students and for the best of taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments tonight?
I'm Barb Goodwin, I'm from Leonard Lane, and I was just gonna sort of ask or maybe comment on the tax burden. because I've heard a lot about it and I'm a little bit myself, like, I can follow up after the meeting to understand a little bit more. But what I see here is like, not apples to apples, right? If we leave these projects till later, we decide that we now need to wait for a new north at a later time. Or if we need to think about a new rec center because we undersize this, the opportunity to have something that fits the town right now, then the debt burden on those projects is in the future. So in some ways, it's wrapped all in here, right? The other thing is the town hall and the senior center have debt, right? We took on debt in order to do that. We used local resources and infused free cash into those projects, right? So yes, they came first. Yes, we've used our capacity in terms of the revenue the town has to redirect it to that. And those are great projects. They're investments that there was a lot of work from other groups like this that said those were investments that we really wanted to make for this town. And what I want to make sure is just because this project is after those projects, that we don't say those didn't require debt or those didn't have an operating impact. It's all the same dollar, right? We have a certain amount of money in the town. And we have a certain amount of debt interest built into our budgets, right? And some of that is now being directed into those projects for the future, just like the high school's doing that, right? So this is something that we're gonna have to put on top, but it's built on the foundation of those other projects. So I think hitting those as free projects and this is the only one that has a cost to the taxpayers feels a little bit ingenuous. In terms of like the circles that we run in, right? We all have conversations. We've all been engaged in this talk to people. We had 300 people show up and almost a unanimous vote to say that we should move forward with the feasibility study for this project, that this town needs schools because we haven't invested in them for years. So when we talk about the timing of the project, it actually feels late to somebody who has kids in the school system. When I talk to my friends, they're not understanding why we're not moving forward and that this is a very clear decision. So I just want to counsel everyone to sort of make sure that you're thinking about the broader Wilmington audience and not just the people that you're sort of talking with or positioning with or other things that really we have to do the best we can. You have to make a decision that you think is best for the town with the data that we have available. There's been a lot of work. There's been a lot of time and investment in visioning and trying to figure out and trying to get information in front of you to make a good decision. And so I'm confident that you all will do it. And I really feel grateful for the time and energy that you put into it. And that I think a lot of community members have put into the visioning exercises and into the feedback that has been given. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Public?
I wasn't going to talk because I know I've heard a lot already. My name is Sue Crow. I'm a speech language pathologist at the William Street. I just want to reiterate the same thoughts that Mr. Turner said, that Barb said, and I think we need to also keep in mind how important education is to the residents of this town. And I think you will always hear from people who have very strong views. Those are the first people who are going to be sending letters. I'm one of those people. I'm sure you've read some of my emails, and I feel very strongly that we need a pre-K through 5 building because I'm living it daily, working there. I've attended the Woburn Street School in the north. And now I'm working there and I've worked in many different buildings. And as we're sitting in this room, I can't help but think of how nice it is to be in a meeting room. We don't have that. I work in special education. We need to have meetings with parents, IEPs, and that's the law. And we're running around looking for places to meet. That's the reality. And that's, just I could go on and on about why we need a pre-K through 5, but I'm asking as an educator who's working in the buildings to seriously consider pre-K through 5 because I think that's the best choice. And although the price tag is big. The price tag is only gonna go up with inflation. And anyone who's done a renovation knows that, and in 10 years or so, it will be more expensive, and I'd like to see more new schools in my lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here this evening? We have anyone online? No, that's okay. All right. Okay, next meeting is scheduled for October 8th, again in this room. It will also be a hybrid meeting. We are set on that, but again, appreciate the feedback on the agenda. And we will take that back to the leadership team to work on that. And I think with that, anything further before we adjourn tonight?
Tomorrow night.
Sorry, yes. Another plug for the forum that is being held tomorrow evening in the auditorium. We do have the partnership at WCTV, so that will be captured and recorded for those that might not be able to attend or wish to watch that at home. And again, we're visiting the senior center this Thursday at 2:00. As you heard earlier, the survey will remain open until October 1st. So for friends and family and neighbors, please encourage them to provide this committee with your feedback.
Mr. Brady, time for?
It's at 6:30 tomorrow night. 6:30, okay. With that, we'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Right, and a second. Roll call.
Dr. Brand,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
Diane Allen,
Yes.
Fred Vendel,
Yes.
Kevin Kyra,
Yes.
Kate Bissell,
Yes.
Stacy Scott, Christine Holleran,
Yes.
Christine Murray,
Yes.
Dennis Kelly,
Yes.
Eric Schlegel,
Yes.
Judy O'Connell.
Yes.
Nick Golden.
Yes.
Stephen Turner. Paul Melorani,
Yes.
David Ragsdale,
Yes.
Marianne Galezzo,
Yes.
Michael Pomosio.
Yes.
Greg Minor,
Yes.
Vivian Barbedian.
Yes.
Christine Prendergast.
Yes.
And Justin Kuche.
Yes.
Thank you very much, everyone, and good evening.